Hey guys, I'm really excited today to share something that I found over the last semester that's really aided me in both my academic and professional life. We've all had those situations where we've had a communication breakdown. Nothing's more frustrating than not being able to communicate with somebody, both in the workplace and outside of the workplace. It's important to remember that we're not all the same listeners. We don't have the same styles. We have different listening styles, different listening barriers. So it's really important to remember that we have to navigate through those. We have to dissect them, understand them, and move through it. The first main point I'd like to make is there are 4 main listening styles as defined by our text in BB, and Ivy, Principles for a Lifetime. You can find it on page 109 of our text. The first listening style is relational listeners. The second being analytical listeners. The third, critical listeners. And the fourth, task-oriented listeners. We do have to remember that different styles process messages that we send differently. So we're not always going to have a message received the way that we intended it to be sent, or we're not going to receive them the same way that somebody may intend them for us to receive. It's also important to remember that the different styles are associated with different feelings or objectives. For example, relational listeners they seek to understand the feelings and emotions associated with the message, whereas analytical listeners seek to find the facts and then make a conclusion from that. Critical listeners are evaluators of information. They try to dissect it, whereas task-oriented listeners focus on the outcome of the task. The most critical elements that prevent us from listening well are language barriers. There's 3 main language barriers as defined in our text. You can find that on page 112. The first main barrier is self-barriers, whereas the second is an information processing barrier, and the third is a context barrier. It's also important to remember and note that our listening deteriorates not only when we listen to speeches, as you're listening to now, but when we interact interpersonally. So always keep focused, attentive on the conversation at hand. Lastly, I'd like to address something as far as improving our skills when we're listening to people, some tips in order to retain some more information, and also to let our listener know that we're paying attention and understanding what they're saying. First off, it's very important to turn off all competing messages. That's inner dialogue, thoughts that we have going on. It all runs together. It's important that we clear our minds, hear the message at hand. Second, listen with your eyes. If you're focused, you're going to be listening, and it also gives the speaker indication that you're focused, you can hear what they're saying. Third, understand both the details of the message and the major ideas. This allows you to get the big picture, understand everything, and the finer points as well. All of these bits of information are critical to communicating properly and alleviating any type of stress that you may find in everyday communication issues that you may run into. There's nothing more stressful in the workplace than not being able to communicate with a coworker or with a partner in a relationship. We all understand these stresses. The most efficient way to get along is to communicate the best way that we possibly can. I hope these things are applicable to you in your life, and you can employ them as I'm trying to do. Thanks for listening. Take care.